Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you all for being here. I'm Mariyana Spyropoulos, President of the Board of Commissioners, and with me today are my colleagues, David Walsh, Carrie Steele, Barbara McGowan, Frank Avila, and am I missing anyone? I think Cynthia Santos was here as well. We also have our Executive Director, David St. Pierre, who you will hear from shortly. And it's good to see Darcy Monroe, Consul and Senior Trade Commissioner from the Consulate General of Canada. Our partners from the Danish Consulate, Marianne Meyer, Senior Commercial Advisor, along with Peter Betch and Ivan Anderson. Andrew Koskowski and Leslie Combs from Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky's office, Marianne LeVar from Congressman Mike Quigley's office. We also have Jane Grover from the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, Nancy Furfer, Metropolitan Planning Council, Tom Shepard and Dr. Robert Reeves, Southeast Environmental Task Force, Cindy Scrukund from the Illinois Sierra Club, and Susan Malik McKenna from the Chicago Wilderness. Thank you for joining us today. This project could not have been completed without our many contractors, subcontractors, and consultants. Our design team included Black & Veatch, Millhouse Engineering, Intelligent Design and Construction Services, and Rubinos and Macia Engineers. Besides Ostara, our construction team included Reyes Group, Independent Mechanical Industries, Devane Brothers Electric Company, Direct Steel, Leiden Electric, and CT Mechanical. Garrigan Construction, Phoenix Business Solutions, and Amalgamated Service. Many thanks to all of you for your hard work and your partnership. The district cares about the Chicago area waterways and protecting water quality. And today is an example of how working together can help us achieve this mission. In just 4 days, the district will turn 127 years old. We were created in 1889 to address the problem of contaminating the source of our drinking water supply, Lake Michigan. We have successfully done that and more since we were established. The present day brings a different challenge, and that's an overabundance of nutrients in our waterways. Phosphorus is a requirement for life to exist, and as with everything, in excess can be harmful to our environment. With the installation of the world's largest nutrient recovery facility, we are committed to advancing a long-term sustainable solution. The Stickney Water Reclamation Plant serves an equivalent population of 4.5 million people over 260 square miles. It is designed to treat up to 1.4 billion gallons of water each day. The Water Reclamation District is dedicated to becoming the utility of the future. Ostara's technology is a solution to managing the overabundance of phosphorus while creating a revenue stream through the sale of the fertilizer. This is a win for the environment as well as Cook County taxpayers. As a custodian of the largest water reclamation district plant in the world, we look forward to removing 10,000 tons of crystal green per year. This project would not have been completed without the oversight of our executive director, and I now ask David St. Pierre to say a few words.
Thank you, Madam President. Theodore Roosevelt, on May 13, 1908, held the first Conservation Congress. And in his speech, his opening speech, he said, "This conference on the conservation of natural resources is in effect a meeting of the representatives of all the people of the United States called to consider the weightiest problem now before the nation. And this occasion for the meeting lies in the fact that the natural resources of our country are in danger of exhaustion if we permit the old wasteful methods of exploiting them longer to continue." 1908, and here we are in 2016, is that right? I lose track now that I'm getting older. How important is it that we start thinking differently about this word waste, and we learn how to reuse the resources that we're blessed with? That is the utility of the future idea, and the Ostara product, the crystal green product, is one of those products that conforms with that idea that we no longer can think of waste, but we have to think of resource. We have to recover those resources. We have to learn to use all the resources we have, keep those resources where they need to be, and keep them out of where they don't need to be. So I'm happy today to be here to open this facility. We've been talking about this for years. After a while, you start feeling like you might be lying a little bit. But here we are today. We're opening this great facility. Thank you for coming, and I hope you enjoy the future.
Thank you, Dave. Our first guest is the Acting Administrator of U.S. EPA Region 5, Bob Kaplan. Prior to assuming leadership of the region, Bob was the Deputy Regional Administrator and formerly the Regional Counsel, supervising 125 attorneys responsible for civil and criminal enforcement actions under federal environmental statutes in a 6-state region. We were fortunate to have Bob join us as we unveiled our O'Brien Water Reclamation Plant disinfection facility a few months ago. So it's great to see you again, Bob, under wonderful circumstances. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mariyana, Spyropoulos, and congratulations to the MWRD for bringing this truly innovative nutrient recovery facility online. It seems like it was just a few weeks ago, but I guess that was now a couple of months ago that we were at O'Brien. We get together, this same group, it seems like, regularly for openings of things that are superlatives, the biggest and the best in the world, and this is just one of in a series. I have to say, thanks for the much better weather, although we don't have the cool sunglasses that we did last time for the disinfection plant. That was a great event, as is this one. So this is a huge step forward for the environment. It takes nutrient pollution out of a critical waterway, helps with hypoxia in the Gulf of Mexico, and deals with a critical water problem. Phosphorus and nutrient and nitrogen are the biggest offenders, and this will help greatly with phosphorus. As we know, most nutrient pollution comes from runoff, but the biggest point source of nutrients in the Gulf of Mexico is this city, is Chicago. Those nutrients make a very long trip, and they do a lot of damage along the way. I'm proud that EPA and Illinois EPA worked together on new permits for the district for the 3 largest wastewater plants. For the first time, we were able to include phosphorus limits of 1 milligram per liter for all 3 plants, and that's a huge step forward. The district estimates they can do even better. They hope to eliminate discharges of more than 3 million pounds of phosphorus every year to the Chicago area waterways. That accounts for 34% of Illinois' phosphorus reduction goal, and that's a huge number. As David said, this project represents not just a huge environmental benefit, but a shift in thinking for wastewater facilities and for communities. Rather than viewing phosphorus as a waste, as it has been for many years, we're beginning to see it more accurately for what it is, and that's a valuable commodity. I'm told that the supply of phosphorus is actually dwindling in this country, so this is helpful in recovering it, and it preserves a needed resource. The district plans to turn the recovered phosphorus into an eco-friendly fertilizer, and I see huge bags of it behind me. This project creates jobs, demonstrates our ingenuity, and shows us a path to prosperous and environmental future. It's the best of the partnership between Illinois, EPA, and MWRD. EPA commends the district for setting this great example of beneficial use right here in Stickney. Thank you, and congratulations again to the district and to Ostara on this outstanding accomplishment. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel sends his regrets, and I was with the mayor on Sunday, and he wanted to let us know how important this facility is to the Chicago area and its waterways. In his place is Deputy Mayor, Stephen Koch. Since 2012, Stephen's responsibilities have included oversight of the Mayor's Economic Council, job creation and retention, budget issues, municipal finance and revenue, and economic development. Stephen spent 27 years at Credit Suisse, where he ran the global mergers and acquisitions business and advised on landmark transactions across a broad range of industries. In 2012, he was a presidential appointee to the Independent Advisory Panel for the Recovery, Accountability, and Transparency Board. Welcome, Stephen. No, no problem. Thank you for coming.
No, pleasure. Good morning, everyone. And it is a beautiful day, so it's great to be here. I think all of you know, and the mayor's talked a lot about, and we're delighted to be here today because really for many, many years, Chicago has placed an enormous emphasis on its lakefront. And we all know how precious that is as a resource and a gateway to the city. But equally, the river and the many waterways that cut through Chicago have become an incredibly important part of our backyard. And it's really the backyard that connects our neighborhoods, makes life as we know it as great as it is in Chicago. But we all know that that's a precious resource that has to be husbanded. And as part of that process, I think we've come to know that not only do we have a huge influence on the quality of our own water and our own waterways, but a huge effect on water quality and aquatic life downstream from us, downstream the Chicago River, the Calumet River, Des Plaines River, the Illinois River, all the way through the watershed. And we all know what algae blooms do throughout that system and the harm that can come if we aren't careful with what happens here. So today's investment that we're here to celebrate is really incredibly exciting. I've been fascinated as I've learned about it and come to understand what it can do in terms of just that incredible, the enormous impact it can have by taking some of the harmful runoff fertilizers out of the water, phosphorus out of the water. We can transform it into a useful, environmentally friendly product that can be an enormous resource of reuse, has a huge economic impact. It's just an enormous, important milestone for us in terms of our ability to not only take care of our own problems, but really do better for people downstream and do better for people in the rest of the country. And maybe even most importantly, from my standpoint, be a model for the entire country and the rest of the country and what we can do both from an environmental standpoint, from an economic standpoint, and just in terms of being a good citizen for the rest of the world. So I'm thrilled to be here on behalf of the mayor to commend the various federal, local partners, private partners for what they've done here. This is a very exciting opportunity for the future. So congratulations and thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Phillip Abrary is the founder and CEO of Ostara, the Vancouver-based company that has been defining the new standard in nutrient recovery since 2005. Ostara's leading-edge technology recovers nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen from wastewater streams and transforms them into a high-value, environmentally responsible fertilizer, which is marketed and sold by Ostara as Crystal Green. Mr. Abrary is an expert on water and sustainability. His passion for the technology that provides a cost-effective solution for improving wastewater treatment plant operations while protecting our waterways is evident as Ostara and the district launched the largest facility in the world here today. Welcome, Phillip.
Thank you, Mariyana, and welcome. Thank you all for being here today with us. With me today here, we have two of my board members, Bobby Kennedy, Steve Pinney, and also our board chairman, Fritz Corrigan, is here. Also, another special guest here today is one of my co-founders, who actually happens to be a Chicago native by the name of Joe McHugh. And there's Joe back there, so Joe, welcome. So before I begin, I want to acknowledge the tremendous work that the Ostara, the district, and all the other teams have done to bring this thing to being. This is truly an impressive facility. I've seen more of these than anybody else has in this room probably, and this is very impressive, and I think they deserve a round of applause for having put together this facility. So from my perspective, this whole thing started about 11 years ago, almost to the day. There was 4 of us sitting around a table thinking about, we've just formed this company called Ostara Nutrient Recovery Technologies, Inc. We just licensed this technology out of the University of British Columbia. And we're trying to figure out how we're going to scale up this technology and build a business that will be game-changing and everlasting. We knew it had to be doable because you had this technology that was solving problems in terms of maintenance and the need to meet regulatory requirements for wastewater treatment plants. And we were also able to recover and create this product that is essentially essential to feeding the world. So we knew it had to be possible. But what our challenge was is we had to, first of all, scale up the technology by at least 100 times for it to be feasible in a municipal setting. We also had to understand this fertilizer better and find out how it works and where it works and how we can get maximum value for it. So fast forward 11 years to today, and we have successfully scaled up the process. In fact, what you see before you here is a scale up of 2,000 times of what we started out with 11 years ago. So these are the largest reactors that we've ever designed, and they are now in operation here. We also conducted hundreds of studies with growers and scientists on the product to understand this crystal green fertilizer better. And first thing we found out is that this product is actually not water soluble, which to some might be surprising, but that's a good thing, and I'll explain to you why. What it means is that the product actually requires a bit of acidity in order to dissolve, and roots excrete acids in order to feed. So it is therefore root activated. So when a root of a plant wants to feed, it will cause this material to deteriorate and the nutrients to become plant available. This is really important for a number of reasons. First of all, from an environmental perspective, you are preventing runoff when there's lots of rains and water hitting this type of fertilizer because it doesn't dissolve. It just sits there and waits for the plant to take it up. But also from a plant perspective, because it's so efficient in getting into the plant does better, is healthier, it's stronger, and you end up getting as good or if not better yields and actually having to use less nutrients to grow those plants. So it's a win-win for the plant and the environment, and the farmer, of course. And finally, I think it's safe to say that opening Ostara's 12th nutrient recovery facility, and this the largest in the world, there is proof that nutrient recovery is real. It's here to stay, and we have a business and technology that is very real and game-changing. In terms of scale, though, this facility takes things to a whole new level. And if I look at our pipeline of upcoming projects and what we're looking at, there's nothing that comes near this facility, although some are getting close, and that's thanks to the initiative taken by the district to actually build this facility and show that it can be done at this scale. But I thought maybe for the rest of you here, what does all this scale mean? You know, there's just some big amount of equipment here and lots going on, but what does the scale really mean? So I solicited the help of our smartest engineers and agronomists in the company, and I said, guys, you got to help me with this. We got to put all of this in layman's terms. So it involves a bit of mental math, so please bear with me and we'll walk through this together. So there are 3 Pearl 10,000s here, and each Pearl 10,000 is capable of producing 10 tons of crystal green per day. So that's 30 tons of product that these reactors could produce per day. And if you assume that they're going to run for 300 days out of the year, and for whatever reasons, you're going to end up with 9,000 tons of product a year or more. This product is 28% phosphorus in it. So 28% phosphorus out of 9,000 tons, which is 18 million pounds of product, is 5 million pounds of phosphorus is what we can extract using this process into product. So again, this may not mean much to you unless you're an agronomist or a farmer. But if you take the 5 million pounds of phosphorus, you relate it to, say, growing potatoes, you can grow 34,000 acres of potatoes with that. That'll equate to about 1 billion pounds of potatoes that you can grow in a year with that product. So again, relating it to something more practical, this is what the guys came up with, so I have to go with it. You can make 250 million bags of potato chips with that. And if you put those bags of potato chips end to end, you would go around the Earth's circumference 2 times. So I hope this has given you a bit of sense of scale of what this is all about. So in closing, I want to thank the district for having the foresight and commitment to making this facility a reality. The district is to be applauded for the strong example it set for the industry and the water community. And they're really setting the bar for changing the way that wastewater reclamation facilities view waste, and for the environment, which will provide enduring benefits for generations to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philip. And now it's my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, named one of Time Magazine's Heroes for the Planet. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is credited with leading the fight to restore the Hudson River and to protect New York City's water supply. What began as a love of animals and nature, kayaking the whitewater rivers of the world with his father, has today yielded a passionate environmentalist. An environmental attorney by profession, he is president of the Global Waterkeeper Alliance, chief prosecuting attorney for the Hudson River Keepers, and senior attorney at the NRDC. He is also on the board of directors of Ostara. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excuse my voice. And I'm really happy to be here. I'm very proud of this company. I've been involved with them for 8 years. But I got involved in this racket through advocacy, through litigation, and I have represented since 1983, I've represented commercial fishermen on the Hudson River. And one of the things that they taught me is that we're not protecting the environment so much for the sake of the fishes and the birds. We're protecting it for our own sake, because we recognize that nature is the infrastructure of our communities. If we want to meet our obligation as a generation, as a civilization, as a nation, which is to create communities for our children that provide them with the same opportunities for dignity and enrichment and prosperity and good health as the communities that our parents gave us, we've got to start by protecting our environmental infrastructure, the air we breathe, the water we drink, the wildlife, the fisheries, the public lands, those things that can't be reduced to private property ownership, but by their nature are the assets of the entire community. They're the commons, the public trust resources, and those things that the Constitution of the state of Illinois says that the people of the state of Illinois own the Illinois River, and they own the Calumet River, and they own Lake Michigan. They're not owned by the big mega farms. They're not owned by polluters. They're not even owned by city governments. They're owned by the people. Everybody has a right to use them. Nobody has a right to use them in a way that will diminish or injure their use and enjoyment by others. Every child in this county, whether they're black or white or rich or poor, humble or noble, has an absolute right to go down to this waterway, throw in a plug and pull out a fish and come home and feed it to their family with the security that they're not poisoning somebody, and with the assurance that those fish are going to be there where they belong. And when we pollute those waterways, we are stealing that right from the public, and it's a fundamental right. You know, I sometimes think about what happened in New York City. I've worked on the Hudson for most of my career, for all of my career. And that waterway was the social safety net. During the Great Depression, when tens of thousands of men lost their jobs in New York City, 22,000 men went down to the Hudson and found work. And those that couldn't found sustenance for their family, like picking oysters and fishes. They could feed their family. But today, the General Electric Company poisoned the Hudson River so the fish can't be sold anymore. So that critical social safety net, which was here before there was Social Security, before there was Medicare, before there was jobs programs, that was the social safety net for our society. And we have no right now to pollute those social safety nets and steal them from the public and from future generations. And you know, this and some other companies that I've been involved with are kind of a gift to me, because litigation, you know, is not that effective a tool. You can make one person maybe curb some dangerous behavior and destructive behavior, but you don't really change society. And Martin Luther King said that the tools of advocacy were agitation, legislation, and litigation. And I've done all of those things. I think the thing that's most effective that I've found, that's most revolutionary, that's most disruptive is innovation. And this company shows that. And I'm going to give you an example. When I started litigating against polluters in 1983, I represent a group of fishermen on the Hudson River at that time who had gathered at night, who saw their livelihoods being destroyed, their property values being destroyed, their recreational values being destroyed, and opportunities. We have the oldest commercial fishery in North America on the Hudson. It's 350 years old. Any of the people I represent come from families that have been fishing that river continuously for 3.5 centuries. And they saw in 1966, Penn Central Railroad began vomiting oil from a 4.5-foot pipe into the Croton Harmon Rail Yard, into the Hudson River. The oil went up the tides, up the river on the tides. It blackened the beaches. It made the shad taste of diesel, so they couldn't be sold at the Fulton Fish Market in New York City. And all the people in Crotonville came together in the only public building in the town, which was the American Legion Hall. It's a very patriotic community. Crotonville had the highest mortality rate during World War II of any community in our country. These were people who weren't radicals, they weren't militants, they were people whose patriotism was rooted in the bedrock of our country. But that night they started talking about violence because they saw something that they thought they owned, which was the purity of the Hudson's waters and the abundance of those fisheries, and it was being robbed from them by corporate and government entities over whom they felt they had no control. And that night, a very famous fly fisherman named Robert Boyle stood up in front of that group. They were talking about violence. Somebody suggested they put a match to the oil slick coming out of the Penn Central pipe and burn up the pipe. Somebody else said they should roll a mattress up and jam it up the pipe and flood the rail yard with its own waste. Somebody else said they should float a raft of dynamite into the intake of the Indian Point power plant. Almost all of these people were Marines who had come back just recently from Korea and Vietnam, and they were angry. And this guy stood up, whose name was Bob Boyle, and he had discovered an ancient navigational statute called the 1888 Rivers and Harbors Act that said it was illegal to pollute any waterway in the United States. You had to pay a big penalty if you got caught, but also there was a bounty provision. It said that anybody who turned in the polluter got to keep half the fine. And he said to these men and women, 300 people gathered in the American Legion Hall, we shouldn't be talking about breaking the law, we should be talking about enforcing it. And they resolved that night that they were going to go out and track down and prosecute every polluter on the Hudson and bring them to justice. 18 months later, they shut down the Penn Central pipe. They got to keep $2,000. They used that money to go after Ciba-Geigy, Tuck Tape, Standard Brand, American Cyanamid, the biggest corporations of America, Anaconda Wire and Cable. They got $200,000 from that company. They built a boat and began patrolling the river. When I started working for them at end of 1983, 84, most of the corporate polluters had been cleaned up on the Hudson. And I ended up spending a lot of my time suing municipal sewage treatment plants. The Clean Water Act revolving fund money had dried up by then. So a lot of these small municipalities had no money. They wanted to comply with the law. They had no money to make the capital changes. And one of the worst experiences I had as a young attorney, environmental lawyer, was sitting across a table from the supervisor of a tiny town in upstate New York called Newburgh, New York. And we had found him dumping aluminum sulfate and aluminum hydroxide sludge into the Hudson River that was used to remove phosphorus. And we had already sued because every single sewage treatment plant on the coast of Connecticut, Bridgeport, Norwalk, Stanford, Branford, Greenwich, New Haven, West Haven, everyone, to force them to remove nitrogen. And you can do that by manipulating the aeration in the tanks. But phosphorus, which causes algae blooms in fresh water, is much more difficult and expensive to remove. And you need a lot of chemicals, and for small towns it was really hard. And this town particularly could not find a place to dump its sludge because none of the landfills wanted aluminum sulfide sludge because it never dries out. So they had to shift it all the way up to a toxic waste landfill in Niagara, New York, which was a 6.5-hour trip and the expenses, the transportation expenses were killing the town. A town supervisor sat across the table from me and he said, Bobby, we want to comply with the law. We have to choose between complying with our phosphate mandates that are in our permit and having a football program in our high school. And that is a choice that no environmental lawyer wants to hear. We want to believe that what we do is good for the whole community. And we want to believe that it makes economic sense to do it. And I had that kind of conversation with many, many people over the next 20 years. And then I met Phillip, and he showed me this technology. And as he said, you know, this is unique. If you, every farmer in Illinois needs phosphorus. You need it to grow crops. Where does that phosphorus come from? It comes from Florida, where I've been to the phosphorus mines, which are running out. We're running out of global phosphorus right now. Within 30 to 50 years, we will have no more phosphorus. And nobody knows what we're going to do at that point because every crop needs it. If you want to get phosphorus in this state, the phosphorus that is used on these farms in this state right now is cracked out of the rock in Florida and Morocco, which has 70% of the phosphorus on Earth. And it's shipped across the Atlantic in tankers, and it's offloaded and brought across the country in semi-trucks and railroad cars and spread on the farms. And guess what? If the farmer spreads it just before, if he hears the wrong weather report or makes the wrong guess, and he spreads it a day before a storm, 70 to 80% of that phosphorus can sweep away, offlow into the local creek or tributary river, get into the Calumet, go down to the Missouri and into the Mississippi, and it goes to add to the 7,000 square mile dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. That's what's feeding it. So this material, which we're going to harvest locally so it doesn't have that kind of carbon imprint. This material, if you put water, as Phillip said, it's not soluble in water. If you filled this little jar with water and you waited 6 months, the little BB pellets in here of fertilizer would look exactly the same. They will not dissolve in water. The only thing that makes them dissolve is when the plant decides, I need more phosphorus. And during its life cycle, that plant needs phosphorus, different amounts of phosphorus at different times in its life cycle. So, and with this fertilizer, the phosphorus is always available. Whenever the plant wants it, it releases a little organic acid and the plant can uptake it. So 6 months later, it might need a little more and it can uptake it. And that's why farmers want this, because it helps them with their productivity and they don't have to keep applying it and wasting it and destroying the environment. It's really a miracle. And you know, for me to be able to, as soon as I heard about this company, I wanted to be involved in it because it solves this problem. Now, I've always believed that good environmental policy 100% of the time is identical to good economic policy. You'll hear the big polluters and their, indentured servants in the political process talking about how we have to choose between economic prosperity on the one hand and environmental protection on the other. And that's a false choice. In 100% of the situations, good environmental policy is identical to good economic policy. If we want to measure the economy, and this is how we ought to be measuring it, based upon how it produces jobs and the dignity of jobs over the generations, over the long term, and how it preserves the value of the assets of our community. If, on the other hand, we want to do what the big polluters want us to do, which is to treat the planet as if it were a business in liquidation, convert our natural resources to cash as quickly as possible, have a few years of pollution-based prosperity, we can generate an instantaneous cash flow and the illusion of a prosperous economy. And our children are going to pay for our joyride. And they're going to pay for it with polluted waters and denuded landscapes and poor health and huge cleanup costs that are going to amplify over time and that they will never be able to pay. Environmental injury is deficit spending. It's a way of loading the cost of our generation's prosperity onto the backs of our children. And that's not just an economic bad sense, it's also morally wrong. And this is a moral choice. What we're doing here today is not just making good economic sense, it makes good moral sense as well. When this plant is fully operational, 2/3 of 1% of all of the phosphorus going into the Gulf of Mexico will end up on farmlands in Illinois, never to get down to the Gulf. And that will reduce by more than 1% the entire nutrient loading by phosphorus in the Gulf of Mexico, and it will reduce the size. There's nothing that we have done to date that will do more to reduce the size of that dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. So this, and it makes economic sense. It's such a beautiful story, and I loved, I hated calling these mayors when I was about to sue them and say, because a lot of them, a lot of mayors, frankly, are Democrats, and they have a picture of my father on the wall, and I'd go in, and be suing this guy who has a picture of my father on the wall. And I hated calling them and saying, I'm your newest problem. So now I can call them up and say, I've got a wonderful solution for you. Because, and there's different business models that we use with different plants when we sell these things. Some of them we actually go in and say, right now you're spending $8 or $9 million a year removing phosphorus. We're going to come in, we're going to install the reactor at your plant for free, and then we will sell the offtake, and you don't have to worry about this problem anymore. Some plants do, like this one did. They'll say, no, we want to own the reactors. Like, you guys own the fertilizer, and you have to guarantee us a price for that fertilizer. So we know that we're going to pay off these reactors in 3 to 5 years, and then after that, we're going to be generating $2 to $3 to $4 to $5 million a year of free money. So this plant is no longer a sewer plant. It really is a waste recovery facility. It is mining a very valuable product out of the waste stream and selling that valuable product and making all of us rich. When pollution impoverishes us all, when we throw something away, there is no away. We're throwing it into somebody else's backyard. We all live on the same planet. There's nothing, when we pretend to throw it into Lake Michigan or into the Illinois River, it's not going away. Those aren't sewer systems. Somebody else lives there. And so this is a moral choice. It's a business choice. It's good economics, but it's also a good moral choice. And I want to thank the commissioners for making this commitment and stepping up with the biggest plant in the world. You have become a template for good economics and good morality, and for the truth that good environmental policy is always the same as good economic policy. So thank you all very much, and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. And if all the speakers could now join me at the ribbon, we can start the facility up.